Hello, everyone, and welcome to the LFS podcast with me, Caoimhan Ferris, on this Friday, the 17th of November. We have got some cracking topics to talk about today on the podcast. With some breaking news coming in the last few hours as well today. Big news from the Premier League. We're going to be wrapping up how the first 12 weeks of the Premier League has gone so far. What are the big impressive teams? Who's not performing the way they should be? And who is one to keep an eye on? We'll also be talking about the international break and England's the national team selection. There's been a few kind of questions about Gareth Southgate's selections. We'll be talking about that. Also today, there was another episode of Match Officials Mic'd Up from the Premier League this week. We'll be talking through one of the key incidents from the last few weeks and also going through how the referees dealt with it and what the final decision was and whether it was correct or not. And we will finish off with a lighter topic with about late winners. This season seems to be showing off some big late winners, so we'll be talking about the key ones from this season and what that actually means for the future of the Premier League. Will we see more and more late goals? That's all coming up on this week's LFS podcast.
Keep on moving on.
Welcome in to the LFS podcast. It's been a while since we've done one of these. It's been quite a few months, even, since the start of the season. We wanted to get back, revamp the show, and get back talking about the big topics in football. And this is a huge story. We're going to start with some breaking news. The news that has come through in the last few hours that Everton have been deducted 10 points by the Premier League for financial breaches in 2022. Now, this is an interesting story, by the way, because obviously Manchester City have an investigation ongoing. There's also some talk about Chelsea as well in the last few days about their financial breaches. But I'm just going to read you the Premier League statement first of all about the Everton points deduction by an independent commission. So this is what the Premier League have this afternoon released. An independent commission has imposed an immediate deduction of 10 points on Everton Football Club for a breach of the Premier League profitability and sustainability rules. The Premier League issued a complaint against the club and referred the case to an independent commission earlier this year. During the proceedings, the club admitted it was in breach of the PSRs, which is the profitability and sustainability rules, for the period ending season 21-22, but the extent of the breach remained in dispute. Following a 5-day hearing last month, the Commission determined that Everton FC's PSR calculation for the relevant period resulted in a loss of £124.5 million, as contended by the Premier League, which exceeded the threshold of £105 million permitted under the PSRs. The Commission concluded that a sporting sanction in the form of a 10-point deduction should be imposed. That sanction has immediate effect. So, therefore, it basically means now that the Premier League have introduced this 10-point deduction, a massive deduction for a club that is already trying to avoid relegation, a club that is already under significant kind of restraints, not only on the pitch but off the pitch as well. It's gone through a difficult time over the last few years, Everton, with many different managers, the ownership being questioned, the new stadium being built and that now running over in terms of costs, which they really can't afford to do after what we've seen today coming out. But this is huge for in terms of the footballing side of this of the football club and the kind of the future, really. 10 points is massive considering Everton have had 14 points this season. They've gained 14 points from the start of the campaign. That will put them back on 4 points with immediate effect, so that will be updated very shortly. Everton are going to appeal, by the way, this decision, but it's very unlikely that's going to get overturned at this stage. But they lose the 10 points. They go to 4 points. They're sitting joint bottom of the table with Burnley on 4 points. They have a better goal difference, a massive better off goal difference, which probably helps them out quite massively. But, I mean, you would rather have the extra 10 points, really. And where, of course, not going to hear from Sean Dyche until next week. Of course, we're in the international break. It's probably the best time to kind of release this information so that the club can digest it, the players can digest it, the whole inside of Everton Football Club can digest this information and kind of figure out their game plan for the rest of the season. Because Everton have started pretty well, considering where people expected them to be this season and what they expected them to kind of come up against. We've seen that there are quite a few teams that are a bit worse off than Everton in this league. Burnley, Sheffield United, Luton, Bournemouth, even Fulham at times have looked quite rubbish, yeah, compared to Everton. Everton haven't looked completely exciting, but those clutch of teams seem to be a lot worse off than Everton this season. And this 10-point deduction is just a massive blow to the football club, who have had constant negativity over the last 3-4 years since I think whenever there was that first relegation battle, and it was I think the Rafa Benitez season, I think, when Rafa Benitez was in charge for half a season, and they kind of tried to sort it out at the end of that season. And since then, it's just been constant negative after negative after negative about Everton, and the club's really had no good fortune in the last few years. But this just makes it worse. And this is a very, very serious allegation as well, by the way. You know, they've lost £124 million, which is over the Premier League threshold. Now, it's around about £19 million over the threshold, which in Premier League terms is not a massive amount of money for a big Premier League club like Everton. But when they're spending so much money as they are, with the likes of the new stadium, with the amount of money they spend on players every month, or every year, sorry, every transfer window, they love to spend money, Everton. And clearly, they've not been kind of financially resilient. Of course, the Premier League did. There was an investigation a few years ago, just after the COVID period, but the Premier League kind of let that one go, gave the clubs a bit of lenience because, of course, all the clubs had made big losses over the COVID period. But this is outside the COVID period in the 2021-22 season, where we're back to normal football by then, full stadiums, full kind of getting back into the rhythm of things, and at this point, it looks terrible for Everton, really. Second bottom in the table after a positive start to the season, and they look to be in a difficult way. But the big thing that I think for this, and this could help them out in the long run, is the fact that Sean Dyche will say to his players, you know, look, this has been brought against us. Everyone seems to be against us here, and kind of create that siege mentality in the club of, you know, everything's going against us. Everything, even fate, are telling us that we should be relegated. We're going to fight to our death to not face relegation. Now, there are only 2 points outside the top, inside the bottom three. 2 points off safety with this points deduction, plus having a much better goal difference than anyone else around them. So it's not. It's huge to lose 10 points, but it's not the end of the world, really. In what I can say is the fact that if they keep going on the way they've been going since the start of the season, I mean, they've picked up 4 wins out of a possible 12, 14 points out of a possible 36. I mean, that's a droppage of 22 points, but they were sitting quite fairly. There's a clutch of teams around about from 9th downwards. There's very little between 9th and 16th in the Premier League. 5 points separate those kind of clutch of teams, around about 8 or 9 teams, and that's what will give Everton hope, is the fact that yes, we're down to 4 points, but we've already picked up 14 points this season. We've already got some advantages on everybody else. Let's just keep going, and we'll see how Sean Dyche deals with this. But I have to say, relegation is going to be pretty difficult to stop, and a lot of people, even the bookies, are now predicting that Everton are quite their odds of going down. Obviously, with 10 points less, your odds of going down are a lot bigger than what they were prior to the points deduction, but it's not looking good. And we will see kind of what comes out of this in the next few days, what will happen of Everton's appeal. I personally don't believe that appeal will kind of lead to anything. I think they just appeal it just for kind of the sake of it, and really trying to hope rather than believe that they're going to get that decision overturned. But I think the other key point of this is the immediate effect angle to it. And I mean, we've seen before that football clubs have been given a points deduction for the following season, or a points deduction uh, based on a certain time period, whereas Everton have just been instantly handed out a 10 points deduction, immediate effect, which could come as quite a shock as well. Out of nowhere, we've seen the likes of Juventus as well. They have been deducted points. That's been a whole scandal in Italy. Deducted points, then reinstated the points, deducted points, reinstated. It's back and forth with Juventus over the last few years as well. That's the only real other kind of example of this. This is the biggest ever points deduction the Premier League have ever handed out, and it's kind of uncharted territory. We haven't really seen anything like this in the Premier League in a long, long time, if at all, really. And this could be a massive, massive kind of next few months for this football club, for Everton Football Club, because this could be the difference between staying in the Premier League and being relegated. And relegation is a massive blow, considering this football club is one of the longest-serving clubs in the English top flight. They are one of the longest reigning clubs of not to be relegated. They're one of only 6 teams never to be relegated from the Premier League in their history over the last 32 years, and have one of the longest runs of not having faced a relegation, around about 60 something years since their last relegation, Everton. So it's a long run, and if they do, you kind of struggle to see where the positives will come to get them back into the Premier League. And it'll be a huge loss to the Premier League, not only to that football club, but also to the Premier League, losing a massive historical football club like Everton, who are in the process of trying to rebrand themselves as well with that new stadium, trying to get the crowd behind them again, and get that football club up and running. But it's just negative after negative at the moment around that football club, and it doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. But we will certainly keep an eye on it, and we'll certainly keep an eye on what's going to happen and develops over the next few weeks and months, of course, with Everton Football Club. They've already done it twice, avoiding relegation. Can it be another time this season? And the man who loves to avoid relegation in Sean Dyche. He's only been relegated once with Burnley over those many years of being in a relegation battle. He's now in a relegation battle with his old club, both now on 4 points. Right, moving on to the second part of the agenda, we're going to talk about the Premier League. So that was the big breaking news of the day. Let's move on to our starting 11 story. These are new segments, trying to add a bit of character to this show. Add names for segments. Starting 11, it's usually the first topic that we talk about, but of course the breaking news is more important than that. I'm going to talk about the Premier League so far. We've already seen a very exciting start to the Premier League season, 12 games down, and already starting to see what clubs are where and how clubs are kind of shaping up for this season. And 12 games in, it's around about the third of the way through, Mark, just short of that, around about that. 12, 13 games in is around about the third way point of the season, and we can kind of get some initial kind of ideas about where each football club is going and kind of what their season could hold for them. So I'm going to talk about some key informations, the likes some key football clubs for this one. I'm going to start with Liverpool. Now, these are the football club that have gone under the radar quite so far this season. Only one defeat in the Premier League this season. That was against Tottenham in the last minute when they were down to 9. They have won 3 of their last 5 games, dropping points to just Brighton and Luton away from home. They have one of the best home records of the season, winning all of their home games so far this campaign. They have won 8 games out of 12. The joint best defence in the league with only 10 goals conceded, and are 1 point off the top of the Premier League table. Considering the fact that Liverpool came into this season with a brand new midfield, kind of whisperings of whether the defence will be good enough this season, and of course we know their attacking talent, that is quite substantial really, the attacking talent, we knew what they could offer, but there was a lot of questions about Liverpool, and a lot of questions saying, they're going to be in their transition year this year. Top 4 is priority for Jurgen Klopp, and getting them into the Champions League again and getting them up firing and ready to go for maybe next season, considering the fact they don't have a number 6, they don't have an out-and-out defensive midfielder at the moment. Alexis McAllister is playing that role in kind of an interim until they find one. Wataru Endo is not a long-term option for them, who is 30 years of age. So there's still a few kind of things to iron out for Liverpool. But so far this season, they've been absolutely fantastic to watch at times. I mean, one of the key games that reminds me of the Villa game, Aston Villa at Anfield back in September, a 3-0 win for Liverpool that day. They were absolutely sensational. One of the other games that really brings Liverpool to mind, all at home this season, they've been absolutely fantastic. The likes of Brentford, Forest, Everton, they've kept a clean sheet in all of their last 3 home games. So their strength, they're increasing their kind of strength. They've had a bit of a blip halfway through this start in game week 7 and game week 8 when they lost to Tottenham and then drew to Brighton straight after. That's their lowest points return over a 2 game weeks this season, considering they've won 8 out of 12. They're on a 5-game winning run after that 1-1 draw with Chelsea on the opening day, and since then they've just not looked back. They've been in the top 4 ever since then, ever since that 2-1 win away at Newcastle. They've shown character in that Newcastle win, coming back away at Wolves on occasion, coming back away at home to Bournemouth on a couple of occasions. So they're coming back in games as well. And they're showing different characteristics, this Liverpool team. They can blow teams away. They can hold you out for as much time as possible. They can break you down whenever you're sitting deep, the likes with an Everton. They can go toe-to-toe with teams, the likes of a Brighton, who've absolutely battered them last season. But they can go toe-to-toe with Brighton and the likes of Spurs as well, even down to 9 men. They've shown character to try and get a result out of that and ended up losing in the last second. So Liverpool, their season has been pretty positive. And I don't think Liverpool fans will be out there going, we can win the league, or we're going to be challenging for the title. But 1 point off the top, after 12 games, their next opponents are the team above them, Manchester City at the Etihad. They get something out of that game. They are very, very much in a conversation of they can go toe-to-toe with City this season, and I don't want to kind of burst that bubble too early on for Liverpool and kind of say, they're the real deal, because that's not true. I don't think that they're the real deal just yet, but they have the real bare bones and the proper foundations of a team that can be a title-challenging team in maybe a year or two, that can properly bring the challenge to the top teams. But they're already doing it. They're well ahead of schedule. They're already just a point behind Man City, and already a better defence than them, less goals conceded, and lost less games. So who knows? Who knows what could happen there? Another team I want to talk about, and from an incredible start to kind of a team that have kind of fallen by the wayside in the last few games. After 10 games unbeaten, Tottenham have now lost their last 2 back-to-back defeats away at home to Chelsea and away at Wolves in the last 2 Premier League games. They've kind of fallen off a cliff, really, and not really bounced back when they should have. That Wolves defeat was probably the most Spursiest defeat I've ever seen, or one of the most Spursy defeats I've ever seen. Taking the lead so early on in the game, I think the 3rd minute Brennan Johnson scored, and then for Wolves to score both goals to come back after kind of the 90-minute mark is quite incredible. And we'll talk about that later on, about late winners. But that's been quite remarkable. Tottenham, I don't know. They've been a bit of a non-kind of... They've been so inoffensive. They've been fantastic this season. In the first 10 games, they were absolutely incredible. They got a bit of luck on the way, but everybody has to get a bit of luck every now and again to get where they are. But I mean, considering where Ange started from, he had an incredible start to the season. I think he's won 3 Manager of the Months on the bounce, August, September and October, which is incredible, by the way. I don't think he'll win it this month. But what I would say about Tottenham is I don't think they're going to fall off a cliff completely and completely just see themselves out of any European conversation. I think they'll still very much be in that European conversation. I mean, they're 4th at the moment, a point ahead of Aston Villa. They're still within reach. I mean, a win will put them back top of the table again. So it's quite tight there in that top 5. But Tottenham have kind of... lost their way a bit, and maybe the international breaks come at the right time. They can recharge. They've got Aston Villa at home next Sunday. That's going to be a huge game. They win that, they're in comfortable position. Aston Villa come under a bit of pressure from the teams below them. Villa aren't closing the gap to the top four. It kind of gives Tottenham a bit of breathing room, but that'll be a tough game at the TH next Sunday afternoon. But Tottenham are still an unknown quantity at this moment in time. I still need to figure out what actually is going to happen there. And there's not many expectations. Top four would be incredible for Tottenham this season, considering Ange Postecoglou only came in 12 games ago. So there's still a long way to go. And Tottenham have still a lot of improvement to do. But so far, since the start of this season, I think they've started pretty well. And I don't think their fans would have dreamt that they would be in this position at this moment in time, considering the certain factors, the fact that they lost Harry Kane, the new manager coming in, trying to induct a new style of play. It would have caused a bit of panic in the Spurs ranks, but look where they are. Although they've lost their last two games, I still think they'll bounce back and they'll still be a really threatening team for this season. Moving on to a team that also isn't invincible, and that is Manchester City. I want to talk about Man City, and of course that image there of Cole Palmer scoring that late penalty against City at the Bridge to get a 4-4 draw, which, by the way, is absolutely completely crazy and nuts. 4-4 draw is unbelievable. But it shows that Manchester City aren't impenetrable. Conceding 4 goals is not something City do very often. I don't think they've done it at all. Actually, they probably have done it once under Pep Guardiola, but not very often. And considering how long he's been at that football club, for around about 6-7 years, they've been in pretty decent form, and they don't concede many goals. I mean, 12 goals conceded after conceding 4 goals. They conceded 8 goals prior to that game. You know, they conceded a half of their goals in that one match, so it was a crazy game. But it shows that Manchester City can be got at by teams. And if you go and give the fight to them, I mean, how long have we been saying this? That if teams actually go toe-to-toe with Manchester City, you can get something. If you work out how to beat them and how to kind of go toe-to-toe with them and really threaten them and cause them issues, you can get something out of the game. Force them into areas they don't want to be going into. Don't give them the time and space on the ball. Chelsea done everything right in that game. And they probably should have deserved even more than a point. Probably 3 points. But in the end, that's how good Manchester City are at the other end. They can score from absolutely nothing. But at the same time, I think it's a massive achievement for Chelsea, not only for their personal kind of achievements and kind of their personal goals for the season, but also for the rest of the Premier League. I mean, it shows that the rest of the big teams who believe they're better than Chelsea or are a bit have got more quality than Chelsea, both in attack and in defence, can get something out of City. I mean, we've seen it with Arsenal this season. Arsenal have already beaten City, something they couldn't do on both occasions last season. They've already done it once this season. They aren't impenetrable. They aren't unstoppable. They aren't the invincible Manchester City. They can be got at, and teams have already done that this season. The likes of Wolves and an Arsenal beating them, and of course Chelsea getting a draw out of them. So it is possible to do. And that will give confidence to the rest of the Premier League, especially the likes of an Arsenal or a Tottenham or Liverpool, who are kind of in and around City at this moment in time, that you never know. Something crazy might happen this season. City might not have their best season, and an 85, 86 point season could win you the Premier League table, or win you the Premier League trophy, the title this season. It could be that close. So, who knows? It's going to create more excitement for the Premier League, because it means we'll have a more exciting title race, hopefully. But then again, who knows? Man City could probably go on a 20-game winning run and completely take it away from everybody else. So who knows? But what I'm saying is there's positives there for the rest of the Premier League, that Man City aren't impenetrable. They aren't unstoppable, as we've seen from that 4-4 draw with Chelsea. Moving on to 2 other teams who aren't performing quite where they want to be at the moment. Manchester United and Newcastle United, both trodden down with injuries at this moment in time, with Manchester United having very little in defence with the amount of injuries that they have at the back at the moment. Newcastle coming down with big injuries over the last few weeks as well. That Champions League, Premier League, Cup kind of schedule is kind of hampering them at the moment in time. Has them sitting in 7th, Newcastle, 20 points from their first 12. In the league, Manchester United just above them on 21 points. They are the form team in the league, by the way, at the moment, Manchester United, having won 4 of their last 5. No other team has done that in the last 5 games. They did lose in that period, and that lost to Manchester City at the moment in time. 4 wins out of 5 there for United, but things have been kind of up and down with United this season with those injuries. They've lost 5 of their first 12. 7 wins and 5 defeats, not a single draw on the board. They've a minus goal difference, -3. They've only scored 13 goals. In comparison, the team, if you go right down the table, only a handful of teams have scored less. And they are Crystal Palace with 12, Fulham with 10, Bournemouth with 11, Luton and Sheffield United on 10, and Burnley with 9. They're the only teams that have conceded or scored less goals than Manchester United. The vast majority of the league are all inside 19-20 territory, and some pushing towards 30, with the likes of Villa and Man City around that 30 mark. So Man United are not scoring goals, and that's been a big issue for them this season. They're also letting a few more in than they probably should do with that, but of course that's partly excusable with their defensive injuries. But the lack of kind of ability to score is kind of a concern, and Erik ten Hag, it's not been the honeymoon period. The honeymoon period seems to be over, and they always knew that this season would be more difficult than last season because there's a lot more expectation. Winning a trophy gives you a lot more expectation. It also gives you more time, but it gives you a lot more expectation from the fans, the club, kind of the wider Premier League. Everything kind of goes up a level when you win a trophy, especially at one of the biggest clubs in the world, in Manchester United. And now Erik ten Hag has come under a bit of pressure this season. I don't think anybody in their right mind thinks that he should be sacked, because that will be completely ridiculous. But I do think he could be under a bit of risk. They've got Everton next as well, Manchester United, which will be an interesting one, away at Goodison Park next Sunday. Newcastle, on the other hand, they've got Chelsea coming up next at home next Saturday. What are we saying about them? I think Newcastle are neither here nor there, really. They're kind of in this limbo period of just trying to figure out how to deal with Champions League football and also balance their squad, which, by the way, I said a few weeks into the season, at the end of August, I said once this kind of 2 games a week kicks in, 3 games a week kicks in, it will be a lot more difficult for Newcastle, because I don't think they've got the squad depth to kind of carry them through. And if they lose a few key players, they could be at risk this season. It could be dropping out of Europe, dropping out of cups, and even dropping out of European positions in the Premier League. In terms of the Premier League table, they're 7th at the moment, under threat from Brighton behind them, and West Ham are within touch and distance as well. So it's interesting to see what will happen with Newcastle this season and what way they will go towards the end of the season. I have to move on pretty quickly, but I want to quickly talk about Chelsea. Massive improvements from Chelsea over the last few games. Of course, Tottenham and City, massive teams, massive results. If you said to Mauricio Pochettino you're going to get 4 points from those 2 games, I'm sure he would have bit your hand off, because before those 2 games they were probably the 2 best sides in the league, Tottenham and Man City, and to get 4 points from those, to remain unbeaten from those 2, considering where they've been this season at Chelsea, is quite remarkable and quite kind of fantastic. The Tottenham game, of course, has a few asterisks beside it, with Tottenham down to 9 and Chelsea with 11 players on the pitch, and Tottenham still playing a high line from their own halfway line, which is kind of a giveaway that they were going to concede goals. But Chelsea are definitely improving. I can see what Mauricio Pochettino is trying to do, and I think that's a good sign compared to what Manchester United are trying to do, and I have no idea what Erik ten Hag is trying to implement in that team. But Chelsea are definitely improving. They sit 10th at the moment. They play Newcastle away next. 3 points in that one would put them level on points with Brighton in the league on 19 points. Right, in a moment we're going to talk about the England national team, and we're going to go through the match officials mic'd up again. Another episode of that will go through the key decisions, and one massive decision I have to talk about. That's coming up next on the LFS podcast.
Keep on moving on.
Welcome back to the LFS podcast with me, Caoimhan Ferris, and we're going to move on now to the preview. I don't know where I was going with that, but I thought it was fun. I thought it was interesting, and we're going to talk about England and the national team. Of course, into the international break, and the English team has been announced, and a few queries as to who's missing and why they're missing. And that was just a general image I put up. Those aren't the questionable ones. James Maddison isn't in the squad, of course. Through injury, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Marcus Rashford are in the England national team. But two players that are in it that I dispute, and one player that isn't in it that I think should be, I will reveal now. But let me just run you through the squad for England at the moment then. The goalkeepers are Sam Johnston, Jordan Pickford and Aaron Ramsdale. No issues there. It's pretty normal. The defenders, excuse me, for England are Mark Guehi, Ezri Konsa, Rico Lewis, Harry Maguire, Fikayo Tomori, Kieran Trippier and Kyle Walker. I think that's pretty fair. I think Harry Maguire, he's never going to let go of him. I mean, he's kind of like glued to him at this point. But I think including Rico Lewis, Ezri Konsa, Fikayo Tomori have all played well this season. I think it's pretty good. And Mark Guehi as well, have to mention him. Who's been pretty good this season. Midfielders are as follows. These are where two of my queries come in. Alexander-Arnold, Gallagher, Jordan Henderson, Cole Palmer, Calvin Phillips and Declan Rice. Let me just bring you up to date, right? Jordan Henderson is playing in the Saudi Pro League in front of 600 people every week. He's not playing top level football. Why is he still getting a position in England, in the England national team? Isn't it based on how you're playing for your club, and which your club should be at top level football? He's not playing at top level football. He chose money over top level football. So, plus, at the same time, what is he going to offer you at what, 31, 32? Is he really what you want for an England team at this point? Considering the fact that you can't use that kind of experience excuse, because the vast majority of that team has experience at this moment in time. So that's not an excuse. I don't know why Jordan Henderson's in. That's one of my players I dispute. And Calvin Phillips. I don't think he's been playing enough to first team football. I mean, he hardly gets a minute for Manchester City at the moment. And I mean, do you want a player that doesn't have match sharpness in your squad? I don't think that's sensible. But that's Gareth Southgate for you. Calvin Phillips and Jordan Henderson are the two players that I think really are quite lucky to be in this England team, considering recent factors. Considering that Calvin Phillips has had probably less minutes on the pitch than probably a mouse at the Etihad, and Jordan Henderson is playing in front of a crowd that you could probably fit into someone's back garden. So, I mean, let's get real here. They're not playing at top level football. Jordan Henderson's definitely not playing at top level football, and Calvin Phillips is at a top level football club, but he's just not playing football full stop. So questions to be raised there. The attack, I think, are absolutely fantastic. Just listen to these options. 7 forwards Gareth Southgate's bringing, and these are the options. They're absolutely fantastic. Jared Bowen, Phil Foden, Jack Grealish, Harry Kane, Marcus Rashford, Bukayo Saka and Ollie Watkins. Fantastic. I think they're incredible decisions. Incredible players. My only query is there's one player missing. Where's Raheem Sterling? Sterling just completely snubbed? Why is Raheem Sterling not in the squad? Has he not done enough? I mean, he was absolutely fantastic against Manchester City. He's been incredible this season. Raheem Sterling has been wonderful. If Cole Palmer's getting in, Raheem Sterling should easily be in there. They have been hand in hand one of the best attacking partnerships we've seen from the Premier League this season. Chelsea haven't been unbelievable at scoring incredible goals and kind of ripping teams apart, but what they offer, if Cole Palmer's in the team, Raheem Sterling should also be in the team. You can't use the excuse of Chelsea are not performing well because Cole Palmer's in the team. So I'm not using that excuse. I can't understand that excuse, because if you're putting Jordan Henderson in, and Calvin Phillips, I'll not go back to them because I'll be here for hours, but if you're putting them in, then you have to put Raheem Sterling in, surely. Why is Raheem Sterling being snubbed? I mean, I don't understand this. I mean, he was the top goal scorer in the Euros. He was incredible for England at the Euros. At the World Cup, he didn't go to the World Cup, of course, but I think England, if they get it right, they could win the Euros in the summer. In next summer, they could. They have a possibility. I think them and France could be the two teams that I think could cause the most threats to the Euros this summer. Um, but if they get it right, Raheem Sterling should be playing for the England national team. He's been one of the most amazing forwards in the Premier League over the last few years for England. I mean, Marcus Rashford has been hot and cold. Um, I don't want to go with anybody else in that team. Jack Grealish hasn't been getting unbelievable amounts of football. He's been battling on that left-hand side for football with Phil Foden at points, who have both been at times snubbed by Pep Guardiola in the City team, but they're both in, rightfully so, by the way. But there's some other options that are a bit more questionable, and I'm like, why are you questioning them? You know, why are you not questioning them and you're questioning Raheem Sterling? Why are you including them and not Raheem Sterling? It just baffles me a bit, which is kind of interesting, to say the least. Um, but I also think Jordan Henderson and Calvin Phillips are lucky to be in that England squad because James Maddison isn't. Um, if James Maddison was fit, I think Jordan Henderson or Calvin Phillips will get the cut. But then again, it doesn't. I don't understand why Raheem Sterling is still not in the squad. It baffles me. But Gareth Southgate works in mysterious ways. I mean, I don't even think he knows what he's doing half the time. I don't think the players know what they're doing half the time at England. But there we go. That is the preview. The England team choices. The England squad. They play Malta tonight, as I'm recording this, on Friday the 17th of November. And then they're away on Monday night. I think it's North Macedonia on Monday night. They have. So, some pretty easy games. They're already qualified, England. Almost. All but qualified at the moment. And they'll be heading to the Euros, obviously. And they have a big chance of trying to win the Euros this next summer. Right. Okay, moving on then. And we're going to talk about the big decisions from the Premier League referees. This has been something that has been quite taken up different opinions this season, this programme about match officials mic'd up, especially this episode. The latest episode has got a lot of criticism about Michael Owen kind of sucking up to, of course, the referee chief there, the great Howard Webb, kind of sucking up to him and just laughing at decisions that are completely awful. I mean, I don't know what Michael Owen is on, but I mean, who chose him for that? No offence, Michael. No offence if you're watching this. I don't think you would be. I doubt that. But Michael Owen, who decided that? I don't think he's a great no, not an instigator. Interrogator. There we go. He's not a great interrogator. He's not got someone that. He's not someone that's got a backbone, really. Let's be real. You know. But let's talk about the refereeing decisions, and I want to talk about one key specific one, and it comes from the Spurs-Chelsea game. There was a lot of confusion about this, about the kind of one of the big decisions. I'm going to talk you through the incident. I'm going to say what the referees did. I'm going to also kind of sum up what Howard Webb said in his analysis, and then I want to say what the actual decision, whether it was correct or not, in my opinion. So the decision, Spurs 1, Chelsea 4. It was when Spurs went 1-0 ahead after a scramble in the penalty area, and Moises Caicedo scored from 20 yards. That goal at the bottom corner from Moises Caicedo from the edge of the box. Now, what the officials did was they put the flag up for offside against Nicholas Jackson, who was in an offside position from the initial kind of foul, or from the initial incident, which Moises Caicedo kind of scored the goal, but Nicholas Jackson was impeding the goalkeeper. He was in an offside position, so therefore the goal didn't stand. Pretty much fair. So the VAR advised the referee Michael Oliver that Jackson was in an offside position. There was then a committing of a serious foul play action from Christian Romero on Enzo Fernandez in the build-up. Michael Oliver views that passage of play pitch side and confirms a straight red card for Romero and a penalty for Chelsea. So this all comes after the offside was given. But what they did was, in the build-up to that, there was a foul by Christian Romero. Before the ball even comes to Moises Caicedo, there was a foul in the build-up with Christian Romero challenging Enzo Fernandez. I think this was a good process from the referees. It was quite a complicated phase of play. There was quite a lot going on. There was challenges going everywhere. There was offsides. There was a goal. There was a penalty shout. There was a red card shout. There was a lot going on here. And I mean, let's just talk about what Howard Webb has said. He said, "We're seeing a situation here where a penalty is missed on the field, but they're not always easy to identify in full speed. I know the check took a bit of time, but the VAR had to go through that process diligently to establish whether Jackson was in an offside position. And if he was, which was the on-field call, then let's have a look at what happened before that with Romero going in on Enzo." So I think it's good due process from the referees actually once they got a decision right and followed the process the way they should have and actually came to the right conclusion. Nicholas Jackson was impeding the goalkeeper. He was in an offside position, therefore the goal can't stand, so Moises Caicedo's goal gets chalked off. And then they checked in the build-up to see if anything else had happened, whether it was a penalty shout or red card shout. There was. Christian Romero put an awful challenge on Enzo Fernandez, taking out his ankle, stamping on his ankle. It's a penalty and a red card. It's a very simple decision. The referee doesn't have to have many looks at it. He doesn't really have too many looks at it. And the decision is penalty and a red card for Christian Romero. And I think completely correctly it was given. So it's fair. And I completely agree with the refereeing decisions on that case. I think that was pretty well dealt with. And I want to talk about kind of the VAR decisions and where they've been going in the last few weeks. I mean, I wrote an article on my personal blog, and you can see it on there. The link is on our community tab here on LFS. And what I said was that VAR decisions are going the wrong way at times. It's that subjective that there's no actual fact to it. There's very little fact to it. It's based on internet. It's just based on opinion. I mean, there was kind of controversy at the weekend about Wataru Endo in the Brentford game at Liverpool at Anfield, and there was a challenge there from Endo, which some argued was similar to other challenges that we've seen red cards given for. When Endo wasn't given a red card, VAR checked it and cleared it, said that there was no serious foul play or violent conduct or anything like that in terms of the build-up to it, so there was no issues about a red card. I don't think the referee even gave a foul in that case. But a lot of people have said, the inconsistencies are what letting the referees down and what is doing them in at the moment, for want of a better phrase. But at the same time, I would argue that it's not easy. I mean, I'm not kind of back the referees up here and say that they're faultless. Completely not. They're not faultless. They are the people on the pitch that make the big decisions and have to get them right. There's no excuses now not to get them right. I mean, if the referee's given something crazy on the field, VAR are there to step in and say, look, mate, you've messed this up. Let's change the decision. Or do you want to have another look at this? Because you might want to see it from a different angle from what you originally seen. Now, maybe that might plant the seed into the referee's head, and we've seen multiple times this season when referees go over to the screen, very rarely does the decision they've given on the field stand. More often than not, the decision gets overturned when they go to the screen. But at the same time, as long as due process is followed and as long as the correct decision is found, I don't care how you come to that decision, but as long as the decision in the end is factually based upon a factual reason or factually correct in terms of footballing standards and footballing rules, then completely fine. Sometimes you need to add a bit of common sense into things, and not every challenge is the same. No two challenges are the same. No two challenges are comparable. So there are many, many different factors for every different challenge. So that's why I would say that they're very, very subjective. But things like penalties, offsides, there are a lot of factual errors that are being made in those kind of decisions we've seen this season. They're going to improve, I'm sure they will. But I don't think that they're good enough. I've made the point before. I don't think the referees are good enough. And if we can't get the top level of refereeing, how can we expect to maintain the top level of football? Let's just go with that for now. I'm going to end this because I would talk for days about refereeing decisions and how ridiculous they've been and how inconsistent they've been. I could be here for hours talking. But we need to move on to our last bit of the agenda today, and it is the final whistle. Well, the final whistle has been quite close when it comes to late goals. Late winners has been a massive, massive part of this season so far. It's being dubbed the season of late winners, as you can see there. It has been the most drama-filled season we have seen in a long, long time. There's never a certainty on outcome. There's never a kind of a prediction that is kind of going to go the right way. You can never predict with so many different things this season what way games are going to go. We've seen so many crazy results. I mean, this season we've already seen the latest ever winning goal in the Premier League. That was Dejan Kulusevski in that Spurs' 2-1 win over Sheffield United earlier this campaign in September. 99 minutes and 53 seconds. The 100th minute is the latest winner in Premier League history. That is 8 seconds after Bruno Fernandes' late winner for Manchester United back in 2020 away at Brighton. Also in the 100th minute, Sheffield United beat Wolves already this season. Ollie Norwood with that late penalty to win it for Sheffield United in the 100th minute. So 3 100th minute winners over the last few seasons, 2 of them coming this campaign. Another late winner we've seen over the last few seasons. Last season, back in May, we saw Alexis McAllister, when he was playing for Brighton, win that game against Manchester United 1-0 at Brighton in the 99th minute in that one. This season, we've seen Douglas Luiz scoring a late winner for Villa against Palace at Villa Park in the 98th minute. And also another one we have seen this season, Mario Lemina winning for Wolves against Spurs in the 97th minute. But there have been a clutch of more. I mean, Reece Nelson's against Bournemouth for Arsenal. Fabio Carvalho for Liverpool against Newcastle last season. Back in 2017, Alexis Sanchez against Burnley for Arsenal. Brentford's late winner against Man City last season. Ivan Toney with that one. There have been so many late winners. But this season has seen how many late winners? If I count them up, 1, 2, 3, 4 late winners, all coming past the 97th minute mark or later. That is incredible, by the way. That is unbelievable. It just shows the competitiveness of the Premier League this season, and also the fact that this added time that we're seeing added on more often than not to kind of cut out stoppages in games, it's adding the intensity of the game, it's making it more entertaining, and it's also kind of changing the dynamics of a game, making it more unpredictable. And I think it's fantastic what we've seen this season. I mean, the Premier League has been so unpredictable. It's unreal how good it's been at this season. The quality of the Premier League, I don't think it's been absolutely top tier every single week, because I think some games are a bit scrappy, some games are a bit awful, and goals are a bit easier to score than others. But that happens. I mean, it's still very early in the season, and there's still a long way to go, and we'll improve. But if we keep this level of entertainment and kind of unpredictability factor, the Premier League is going places. I mean, it's already one of the most watched, if not the most watched league in the world, one of the best leagues in the world for quality and also entertainment and also players and managers. It's got everything. It's only got bad officiating, but we'll not go back to that. But late winners are fantastic. Everybody loves a late winner, no matter who you play for, no matter what you're watching. A neutral. It is one of the most exhilarating things to see a team win a game late on. It is absolutely fantastic. Comebacks have also been a massive point this season. Spurs coming back against Sheffield United this season. They were 1-0 down and came back in stoppage time, and they came back a 90th minute winner to win that 1-2-1. We've seen so many late winners. I mean, the most craziest of late comeback wins was, of course, Man City's win against QPR back in 2012 to win the title. Now, that's one of the most iconic ones. Spurs also involved. Remember that game? They were 2-1 down against Leicester. 2 late goals. 95th minute winner in January 2022 to win it for Spurs 3-2 on that occasion. And Man United this season against Brentford, 1-0 down, two goals from Scott McTominay to win it late on in the 93rd minute. So comeback wins are also a massive part of the Premier League. Wolves against Spurs, of course, is another one to really talk about as well. But if we compare the amount of goals past the 90-minute mark, percentage of goals past 90 minutes plus the amount of goals scored this season so far, compared to last season, over the whole of last season, we saw 61 goals scored past the 90-minute mark. Already this season, after 12 match weeks, we have seen 38. So we're only a third of the way through the season and we've already seen 38 goals scored past the 90-minute mark. In comparison to last season, the amount of percentage of goals scored past the 90th minute last season was 5.6%. We're almost double that this season. 10.3% of goals are scored in past the 90-minute mark this season. That is remarkable. That means that this season we're seeing more competitive games, more interesting games, more unpredictability, and everyone playing to the final whistle. Absolutely incredible, and if it keeps going, it will be beautiful. Cannot wait to see more of this. It's so disappointing that we're in an international break and we have to wait another week for more Premier League football. But it's been an incredible start to the season in the Premier League. 12 games in, and no one can predict what way the league's going to go. The title race is wide open, still very early in that. Relegation battle is very wide open. Battle for Europe, wide open. There is still a long way to go. 26 match weeks to go, a long way to go in the Premier League. But what we know it will be is definitely entertaining. Definitely indeed. The season of late winners, I'm sure, will still keep delivering. Well, that is this week's LFS podcast. Thank you very much for joining me for this week. I've been Caoimhan Ferris. It's been an entertaining one where we've talked about Everton's point deduction. What will happen there? They're down into 19th. We've talked about how the Premier League teams have started this season, from fantastic Liverpool, Tottenham falling off a cliff, City not invincible, injury-stricken Newcastle and Man United, and Chelsea on the up. The England national team selection is causing drama. We've talked about why there is no Raheem Sterling and why Henderson, Maguire and Phillips are all being picked. We've talked about the match officials being mic'd up and looking at the key decisions. Have they got them right? Are they wrong? Are the referees making good decisions? And the season of late winners. It's been an incredible LFS podcast. I hope you can enjoy me next time, where we'll be talking about a lot more about the footballing world. Thank you very much for joining me. This has been Caoimhan Ferris with the LFS podcast. Until next time, goodbye.